Hello everyone, welcome to today's presentation. I'm excited to introduce our topic, Unit 10, which is all about you are what you eat. We'll also be exploring some key grammar points related to this theme. Over the next few minutes, we'll look at how our diet influences us and how to talk about it effectively. So let's get started. A particle is a preposition, or an adverb used in conjunction with another word to form phrasal verbs. For example, words like in, off, up, by, along, down, forward, and under are all prepositions that can serve as particles. Let's remember what a particle means in this context. A phrasal verb is essentially a combination of a verb plus a particle. For instance, shut up or look after. When put together, these phrases take on a specific meaning that's different from the individual words. So it's important to understand that particles help us create these multi-word verbs, which are quite common in English. Recognizing how particles work is a key part of mastering phrasal verbs, which are central to fluent, natural communication. In this slide, I want to highlight a common example to help us understand how separable verbs work. Take the sentence, his students write down everything he says. Here, write down is a separable phrasal verb. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that we have options when placing the object. First, we can put the object, in this case, everything he says, between the verb and the preposition. So we could say, his students write everything he says down. Second, since it's a separable phrasal verb, we can also put the object at the end of the sentence, just like we do with inseparable phrasal verbs. The key point here is that with separable verbs, the verb and the preposition can be separated, allowing us to place the object either in the middle or at the end. This flexibility is what sets separable phrasal verbs apart from non-separable ones. So, understanding this difference is crucial because it affects how we structure sentences and communicate clearly. Remember, when you're using separable phrasal verbs, you have these two choices for placing the object, which adds a bit of versatility to your language use. Run into means to meet someone by chance when you were not expecting to. As you see, we cannot separate the words in this phrasal verb. This is why we call it an inseparable phrasal verb. I always run into Ali at the mall. Or you could say, I always run Ali into at the mall. Run into is a good example of an inseparable verb. Now, what does inseparable mean? It means the object must come at the end because the verb and the preposition have to stay together. So what's the main difference between separable and inseparable phrasal verbs? Well, with separable phrasal verbs, you can sometimes move the object between the verb and the preposition. But with inseparable ones like run into, the object always stays at the end. Understanding these differences helps us use phrasal verbs correctly and makes our English sound more natural. This connects to our overall theme of mastering common English expressions for everyday conversation. So today we're looking at the phrase, came across. This means to find something by chance. For example, I came across a photo while cleaning my room. It's a casual way to say you discovered something unexpectedly. Now a key point to remember is that in this phrase, the word come and the particle across stay together. No words should come in between them. If you insert a word between came and across, the phrase becomes incorrect. For instance, saying I came quickly across is wrong. The correct form is I came across. Also, some phrasal verbs are non-separable. That means the object, like a noun or pronoun, always follows the particle directly. So in came across old photos must come immediately after across. Understanding these points helps us use came across correctly and clearly in our conversations and writing. It's all about keeping the verb and particle together and placing the object right after. Let's look at some more examples of non-separable phrasal verbs. These are interesting because unlike separable ones, you can't just move the object around. For example, take give up. You can't say give the book up or give up the book and keep the same meaning. The phrase stays together. Another example is look after. You wouldn't say look the children after or look after the children. The phrase remains fixed. These non-separable phrasal verbs are common in everyday language, and understanding them helps us use English more naturally. Recognizing these patterns is important because it connects to our overall goal of mastering fluid, accurate communication. Let's take a closer look at how particles and objects work with verbs in phrasal verbs. In the example, the chef cut the steak up into small pieces. Notice that up is the particle. The key point here is that in many cases, a noun object can come between the verb and the particle. So in this case, the steak comes right after cut, and then up follows. However, it's important to highlight that with certain phrasal verbs like cut up, the particle and the verb stay together without the object in between. This is what we call a non-separable phrasal verb. But many phrasal verbs are separable. That means the noun object can either come between the verb and the particle or after the particle. For example, the chef cut the steak up into small pieces, or the chef cut up the steak into small pieces. Understanding whether a phrasal verb is separable or non-separable helps us use them correctly in sentences and makes our communication clearer. This concept is fundamental as we explore how particles and objects interact within phrasal verbs, which is a key part of mastering English verb structures. Now let's look at an important point about using pronouns with phrasal verbs. In this example, we see the chef cut it up into small pieces. Notice how the pronoun it comes between the verb cut and the particle up. This is a key rule to remember. When you have a pronoun object, it must come between the verb and the particle. So instead of saying cut up it, which is incorrect, you should say cut it up. This helps keep the sentence clear and grammatically correct. Understanding this pattern is essential for proper sentence construction, especially when using pronouns with phrasal verbs. It connects to our overall theme of mastering the correct structure in English. Now let's look at some more examples of separable phrasal verbs to deepen our understanding. These are common in everyday English and really help make your speech more natural. For instance, pick up, which can mean to lift something or to collect someone. You might say, I will pick up the kids from school. Notice how the object can come between the verb and the particle. Another example is turn off, meaning to deactivate or switch something off. You could say, please turn off the lights before you leave. The key point here is that in separable phrasal verbs, the object can be placed either directly after the verb or after the particle. Recognizing this flexibility is crucial for both understanding and speaking fluently. These examples show how versatile and common these structures are, tying into our overall theme of mastering natural English communication. Now let's look at some common mistakes with phrasal verbs. For example, instead of saying, I can't put cold weather up with, which is incorrect, you should say, I can't put up with cold weather. The meaning is the same, but the correct structure is important. Similarly, in another example, instead of, he is taking his mother care of, we say, he is taking care of his mother. Notice that with three-word phrasal verbs, the noun or pronoun always comes after the entire phrasal verb. This is a key point because three-word phrasal verbs are non-separable, meaning you can't insert anything in between the parts. The preposition, the particle, and the verb stay together, and the object always follows at the end. So, understanding how these three-word phrasal verbs work helps you use them correctly and makes your English sound more natural. Remember, the main takeaway here is that the object always comes after the whole phrasal verb when it's a three-word form. Let's explore some more examples of three-word phrasal verbs, which are quite common in everyday English. These phrases often add nuance and specificity to our communication. For instance, think about phrases like look up to someone, meaning to admire or respect them, or bring up a topic, which means to mention or introduce it in conversation. These combinations are very versatile and help us express ideas more precisely. Remember, mastering these phrasal verbs is key to sounding more natural and fluent in English, and they also connect directly to our overall goal of improving communication skills. So, keep an eye out for these three-word phrases. They're everywhere. Off, I want to start by emphasizing the importance of clarity in our communication. When we say off, it reminds us to turn away from ambiguity and focus on being straightforward. Into signifies moving deeper into understanding, so we should always look inside ourselves and our processes to find clarity. Up encourages us to elevate our standards and aim higher in our goals. oversuggests looking beyond immediate concerns, considering the bigger picture. Out pushes us to expand our horizons, explore new ideas, and step out of comfort zones. Over again reminds us to review and reflect on our progress regularly. Out once more emphasizes the importance of continuous growth and exploration. On signifies turning our attention fully onto our tasks and responsibilities. Off at the end reminds us to disengage when necessary, to maintain balance. For then encapsulates the idea of purpose and intention behind every action we take. And finally, on again, encourages us to stay committed and persistent. Overall, these words serve as a powerful visual metaphor for navigating our journey, each one representing a different aspect of focus, movement, and mindset that help us stay aligned with our goals and the larger vision we're working towards. Let's go through these statements and see what they reveal. When I say, "I never tire of it," it shows how much I enjoy it, whatever it might be, whether it's a hobby, a task, or an experience. Now, waking her up for breakfast might seem simple, but it highlights routines and daily interactions that are meaningful in our lives. "I never turn it down" suggests openness to opportunities or invitations, emphasizing a willingness to accept what comes our way. When I say, "I'm going to send it back," it could be about returning an item, but it also touches on making decisions and boundaries. Most people can't tell them apart. That's an important point, because it shows how some things can look similar but are actually quite different in nature. And finally, "You need to throw it out" reminds us that sometimes letting go or discarding things is necessary to move forward. These points connect to the overall theme of discernment and understanding what truly matters, whether in habits, choices, or routines. Recognizing the differences helps us make better decisions and stay aligned with our values. Let's take a moment to look at some common phrasal verbs with up, down, out, and rid of. These are really useful because they show how small words can change the meaning of a main verb entirely. Starting with forward to, this means to look ahead or anticipate something in the future. It's about expecting something good or planning for what's next. Then we have up on, which can mean to be aware of or to have knowledge about a particular topic or situation. It's like staying informed or being in the know. Next is down with, which is often used to express opposition or resistance to something, like down with a certain policy or idea. It signals disagreement or a desire to oppose. Moving on to down on. This can imply criticizing or being harsh towards someone or something. It's like having a negative attitude or judgment. Rid of is a really important phrase because it emphasizes getting rid of something unwanted or unnecessary. It's about removal and cleaning up. And finally, out of often indicates leaving a place or removing something from a situation. It's used to show movement away from a location or state. Connecting all these, they highlight different ways we can express movement, opposition, knowledge, or removal in our language. Recognizing these patterns helps us communicate more clearly and naturally, especially when discussing plans, opinions, or changes. They remind us that language is flexible and that small words can make a big difference in meaning.